the auction that tilted the market. It began on a morning that looked no different from any other. Fog drifting over the river, carts rattling across cobblestones, merchants unlocking their stalls with the same practiced motions. Yet somewhere within the city, behind doors not meant for the public, a quiet auction was about to unfold. An auction so small in appearance, so mundane in form, that almost no one recognized its potential to reshape London's financial future. The city was expanding into new financial territory. Credit instruments were evolving. Government borrowing was becoming more structured. Markets that once relied on personal negotiations were beginning to formalize. But with this shift came a pressing question. How could vast sums be raised quickly, efficiently, and in a way that balanced the ambitions of lenders with the needs of the state? It was here in this question that the auction found its purpose. To understand why this moment mattered, we must step into a time when government debt was messy, inconsistent, and deeply personal. Deals were made through private conversations, handwritten agreements, and influence as much as logic. The crown needed money constantly, yet lacked a system capable of drawing from the city without chaos or delay. Merchants and financiers, meanwhile, sought a way to lend without surrendering leverage. The old methods frustrated all sides. The reveal began when a small group of officials and leading financiers proposed a simple idea. Let competition, not negotiation, determine the cost of government borrowing. Instead of bargaining behind closed doors, let lenders bid openly for the right to finance the state. Let demand speak for itself. Let price be discovered, not imposed. The auction that followed was modest, just a handful of bidders, a single government obligation, and a room filled with more curiosity than tension. Yet as the bids rose and fell, a new rhythm emerged. For the first time, the value of government debt was shaped not by privilege or favor, but by the collective judgment of the market. It was efficiency born from structure, clarity pulled from uncertainty. But beneath the surface, something deeper was taking shape. Those present sensed that this small experiment carried implications far beyond the walls in which it occurred. Power was shifting. Influence was redistributing. A mechanism had been born that could tilt the balance between crown and city, lenders and borrowers, tradition and innovation. London had taken one quiet step into a future where markets, not monarchs, would define the price of ambition. The quiet success of the first auction spread through London with a subtle yet unmistakable force. In coffee houses and counting rooms, merchants replayed every rumor they could gather. How quickly had the bids risen? Who had offered the lowest rate? Which financiers stepped forward boldly, and which held back, wearing a system that seemed too new to trust. Curiosity mixed with apprehension. Something fundamental had shifted, though few yet understood the full meaning. As word grew, more officials and lenders pressed to repeat the experiment. The second auction drew more participants. The third drew even more. Each round revealed a clearer pattern. Bids organized themselves. Prices found equilibrium, and chaos gave way to structure. Government borrowing, once unpredictable and often unfair, now moved according to rules that rewarded insight, discipline, and speed. For the first time, the crown felt it could tap the city without igniting political or financial upheaval. But with the rise of structured bidding came a new form of tension. The merchants and financiers who once thrived on private negotiation felt their influence slipping. Behind the scenes, leverage mattered less. Personal connections mattered less. What mattered now was calculation, cold, precise, and ruthlessly competitive. Those who had built their fortunes on relationships, favors, and informal networks found themselves overshadowed by a new breed of player. The strategists who could read the market's pulse before anyone else sensed its rhythm. As auctions expanded, the stakes grew. The sums involved multiplied. Government obligations became standardized, easier to trade, easier to compare, easier to judge. The market began assigning value, not only to the state's needs, but to its credibility. A delayed payment could raise yields. A military victory could lower them. Politics, once comfortably distant from financial calculations, now echoed through every bid. This blending of politics and markets unsettled the old guard. Some warned that allowing public finances to be shaped by competitive bidding gave too much power to the city. Others argued that it introduced accountability the state had always lacked. The debates grew sharper with every sale. Those who embraced the auction saw transparency. Those who resisted saw danger. Meanwhile, smaller traders felt the system closing in around them. Auctions required capital and coordination beyond their reach. They watched large houses dominate the bidding, forming alliances and strategies that excluded outsiders. The promise of openness began to look like a stage where only a few could play. And beneath it all, a deeper conflict simmered. As the crown grew dependent on the efficiency of auctions, financiers realized they could use their collective bidding power to influence policy. A subtle yet unmistakable shift of leverage was taking place. The price of government debt began steering decisions in ways no monarch had fully anticipated. London had created a mechanism that brought order to borrowing, but it also created a pressure point, one that could be pressed quietly, powerfully, and without warning. The auctions were no longer just financial tools. They were becoming instruments of influence. And soon, that influence would escalate into confrontation. With each new auction, London's financial system tightened into a structure more disciplined and more combustible than anything the city had known. Competition sharpened. Strategies evolved. Bidders studied one another with increasing intensity, learning patterns, exploiting weaknesses, forming alliances when convenient, and abandoning them when profit demanded. What began as a simple mechanism to price government debt had become a battlefield where power was contested bid by bid. The first signs of deeper conflict emerged as the state's borrowing needs grew heavier. Wars, expansion, and political instability drove the crown to rely more frequently on auctions. The city understood this dependence and adjusted accordingly. When confidence in the government waned, yields rose sharply. When optimism returned, they fell. The crown found itself at the mercy of market sentiment, an unfamiliar and unsettling position for a monarchy accustomed to setting terms, not receiving them. Tension escalated when a powerful bloc of financiers recognized the leverage they now held. By coordinating their bids, they could influence the price of government borrowing in ways the crown could not control. A subtle tightening of credit could signal disapproval of policy. A coordinated surge of bids could support initiatives they favored. Influence had shifted. No longer did authority flow solely from the throne. It flowed through ledgers, numbers, and the collective power of those who understood the auction's mechanics. This new dynamic sparked fierce debate within the city. Some argued that coordinated bidding threatened the integrity of the auction system. Others defended it as strategic necessity. Rival houses accused one another of manipulating prices. Rumors swirled of secret meetings, whispered agreements, and plans to steer the market in ways that benefited a select few. What had been designed as a transparent process was now clouded by invisible currents. As the tension sharpened, smaller lenders grew increasingly frustrated. They found themselves squeezed by larger players whose deep reserves allowed them to place bids smaller firms could not match. The system that promised openness now seemed to favor concentration of power. The auctions illuminated inequality rather than diminishing it. The conflict erupted fully when a major auction, intended to finance an urgent state initiative, produced yields far higher than expected. The crown was outraged. Officials accused certain financiers of withholding competitive bids to punish recent policy decisions. The financiers denied it, claiming the high yields merely reflected market uncertainty. But few believed it was coincidence. The auction room had become a political arena. Panic rippled through the government. If the crown could not borrow affordably, it could not govern effectively. Yet if financiers could influence political outcomes through their bids, then the balance of power had shifted in ways no one had anticipated. The crisis intensified when foreign observers noted the instability. Their hesitation to lend added further pressure, amplifying the strain on domestic markets. London found itself standing at a dangerous intersection, where market discipline collided with political authority, and where a single auction could tilt the future of the kingdom. The mechanism that was meant to bring order had revealed its sharpest edge, and the city now braced for a confrontation that would determine whether markets served the crown, or whether the crown had become dependent on forces it could no longer command. The confrontation erupted when the crown, alarmed by rising borrowing costs and convinced that financiers were manipulating the auctions, summoned the leading bidders to account for their actions. What followed was not a negotiation, but an accusation. Officials charged that coordinated bidding had undermined the state's stability, turning a tool meant to support the kingdom into a weapon wielded for private advantage. The financiers, unaccustomed to such direct scrutiny, defended themselves with equal force. They insisted the auctions merely reflected risk, and that it was a crown, not the city, that had created uncertainty. The exchange fractured any remaining trust between the two sides. The crown proposed new rules to limit strategic bidding and impose greater transparency. Financiers responded by warning that such intervention would distort the market, driving capital away. Tensions escalated rapidly, each side believing the other threatened the integrity of the entire system. The auction room had become a battleground where political authority and financial power collided openly for the first time. The climax came during a critical auction intended to fund a major military campaign. Every official in London watched nervous and expectant. The crown needed favorable terms to proceed. The city needed a stable government to protect its interests. Yet neither side wished to appear weak. As the auction began, bids arrived slowly, far more cautiously than expected. The yield climbed higher. Officials grew pale. A crisis loomed. Then, in a sudden and dramatic shift, several of the largest houses entered aggressive bids, driving yields down. The auction settled at a rate that, while not ideal, allowed the government to move forward. No one spoke publicly about why the change occurred, but those inside the room recognized what had happened. The financiers had acted not out of deference, but out of pragmatism. A destabilized state would jeopardize their own fortunes. They had tempered their influence, not surrendered it. The resolution arrived quietly in the weeks that followed. The crown adjusted its policies, acknowledging begrudgingly that the market's feedback held value. Financiers accepted new guidelines for bidding, understanding that unchecked influence invited backlash. A new equilibrium formed. Neither side fully dominant, neither side fully dependent, each forced to navigate the narrow space between cooperation and control. From this fragile balance emerged a deeper lesson for London. Markets could discipline governments, but they could not replace them. Governments could regulate markets, but they could not command them. The auctions had evolved from simple financial tools into mirrors reflecting the shifting dynamics of power. London stepped forward with sharper understanding of its own creation. The price of ambition would always be set at the intersection of authority and competition, a place where no side could claim victory without risking instability. In the end, the auction had tilted more than market. It had tilted the city's understanding of power itself. Subscribe to join the journey.